All right, we are live. Give it a few seconds for people to hop on here. All right, we got a few on. Let's get rocking. All right, everybody, how's it going? This is Coach Jerry here with Biohacking Truth, and I hope you're having a wonderful weekend. Today, I am in the gym. I just dropped my son off at the gym, so I figured why not go live while I'm here, so I don't have to come back, get him in an hour or so. Apologize for the lighting, and if there's any technical difficulties as we go through this, I want to apologize ahead of time. I don't anticipate that happening, but it just might. Yeah. So anyway. To my type 1 friends that are watching, I apologize right now. So don't text me. Don't tell me how shitty this live was. So type 1, that's a Enneagram reference, guys. If you haven't been paying attention to my content recently, been talking about the Enneagram a lot. And the type 1 is the perfectionist. And I've got a lot of great ones in my circle, a lot of really good type 1s. Someone like me, I need a type 1 in my life to help keep me on the straight and narrow, keep me focused. But anyway, yeah, all my type 1 friends, I realize if I have technical difficulties, it's going to happen. Lighting, I know, is not that good. So what I want to talk about today, guys, is hamstring tightness. And as you probably figured out by now, a lot of times what I talk about on my lives are things that have creeped up throughout the week, throughout my week of working with clients. And this is one, as I did a few assessments this week, I saw a similar problem occurring in people's pelvis. And I know that it's a common thing for people to experience hamstring tightness. And the reason behind that is there's like 9,000 different reasons for your hamstrings to be tight. So if you've had tight hamstrings in the past, currently do have tight hamstrings, maybe you've gone through a stretching protocol, maybe you went through yoga, maybe you did Pilates, something to try and correct that hamstring tightness, but it just hasn't occurred. Any relief anyhow. Here's a couple things. These are just kind of 2 simple things that you can check at any time. So whenever I'm assessing somebody and I'm taking a look, especially if they have tight hamstrings, there's a multitude of things we do. We do things to see if there's a possibility of a disc bulge in their body. But one of the main things we take a look at, obviously, is the cervical alignment, the pelvic alignment, how safe is the spine under load, that type of stuff. But what I see a lot with people's pelvises is it's a direct reflection of what's going on with their hamstrings. So one quick test. If you've got hamstring tightness, before you ever consider doing any stretching or anything like that, just do this quick little test on yourself. Okay, this is kind of a postural test. So I'm going to get over here where you can see the corner. So that corner right there, you want to find a corner of a wall. Very important. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to line my spine up with the corner of that wall. I'm going to put my sacral spine, then my thoracic, and my cervical. So we got boom, 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 right here. Get my feet close together, and I'm here. Now, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to insert my hand behind my lumbar spine, and it should be just about right. It should be just about right to fit my hand in there. Little snug, but nothing too crazy, okay? If you've got an anterior pelvic tilt, that kind of like a Donald Duck type posture, okay, what you're going to experience most likely is difficulty getting your head back like so and touching your thoracic spine. Maybe not. Maybe you've got a rounded thoracic and you'll have difficulty getting your head to touch the wall, okay? That's a first indication. But if you're not getting your sacral spine flat against the wall with your thoracic and your cervical, your head, while still being able to get your hand back there, okay, and you're feeling that wall, the corner of that wall wants to hit a little low in the zone, if you know what I mean. Like, you know, if it wants to wedge itself in there. If you're experiencing that, then you probably have anterior pelvic tilt. That's a very common one there. Another common thing is, like, on one side you got like a muscle knot or a hot spot in the glutes and in the hamstrings on the other side, you might experience a similar thing within the hip flexors, which is that region right in there, within the hip flexors, maybe the quadriceps. If that is your issue, okay, if that is your issue, what I just explained there, the anterior pelvic tilt, the Donald Duck thing, don't stretch your hamstrings. Don't stretch your hamstrings. The reason is that you're most likely experiencing taut hamstrings. So what a taut muscle is muscle that it feels tight, and I guess technically it is tight, but the reason why it's tight is generally because it's been lengthened and weakened. And so because one of the secondary functions of the hamstring muscle, the glute muscle as well, is to stabilize the pelvis. If there's something going on to where it is being stretched and lengthened and weakened, it's going to sense that it's going to lose its ability to stabilize. Even though it's a secondary function for those muscle groups, it's going to sense that it can't really stabilize the pelvis. So it creates tautness, tightness, to prevent you from moving further out of range of motion. So if we look at what the pelvis, at what the hamstring does with the pelvis, the hamstring, when it's at its proper level of tension and strength, is it pulls your pelvis down from the back. Pulls your pelvis down from the back. Now, if we got too much tilt, it's going to pull it down into proper range, okay? And also on the other side of that is your hip flexors and your quads, like I mentioned earlier. Those two have a synergistic effect, right? It's an antagonistic, protagonistic relationship. But what happens a lot from sitting, from lack of activity, maybe from just overall quad dominance in people's lives anyway, what happens a lot is those hamstrings and those glutes, they become long and weak, right? They're just not very functional. So they kind of lose their tension or their natural tonic pull on the pelvis. And instead of pulling the pelvis down here, it lets the pelvis rock back like so, okay? So that's why you might be stretching the bejesus out of your hamstrings and they're not getting any looser. They just always feel tight. So actually the answer there is you're going to want to stretch out the quadriceps and the flexors, okay? Get yourself a nice quad and flexor stretch. And I don't want this to be like a 45-minute live, so I'm not really going to demonstrate that right now. But you want to stretch those quadriceps, hip flexors, because their job is the opposite role. So as the hamstring wants to pull the pelvis posteriorly, the quadriceps and the flexors, they want to pull the pelvis this way. So they're kind of fighting against each other. So if we can think about how things work, right? If the if the hamstring glute's job is to pull the pelvis posteriorly, and the hamstring or the quadriceps and the flexor's job is to pull it posteriorly, all right? Just think about tilting this way or that way, all right? So one wants to tilt it this way, the other wants to tilt it that way, okay? And if it's overly tilted, then one of them's winning, okay? That's all we got to think about here. That's all we got to think about here. So, boom. If my butt is sticking back like Donald Duck, and if I go against the corner of the wall, it wants to wedge itself in there. I know I've got too much tilt, which tells me my hamstrings have gotten long, maybe a little bit weak. So the answer there is you want to stretch out those flexors and those hamstrings. And then as you do that through your corrective exercise program, you also want to strengthen the hamstrings and strengthen the glutes. So that's that problem. If you have the opposite problem, all right? So if you have a hard time getting your hand beneath your lumbar spine, I'll show you what the opposite example of that looks like. If I go up against the wall here and I can touch everything, but I just can't get my hand back there, right? Just wedged, you might have what's called a flat back. All right. So in that particular situation, a few things can be happening. Because the back is flattened, it's already in a position of what we call flexion, right? Which is outside of the normal curve. The normal curve is like this, right? Our back is more like that. All right. So if our discs are used to be in alignment in this shape here, this C shape of the lumbar spine, and we reverse that shape. So this is the shape I got mirror image here. Let's go this way. So this is the shape I want in the spine, right? And if my back is flat, it's like that. Well, those discs have just been put into that much more flexion. Okay. So as I go through life and I sit down and I put it into more flexion, maybe I'm active, I play softball, I play basketball, what have you, but my spine is already in a position where the discs are out of alignment. And then I'm adding load and I'm adding dynamic jumping and running and what have you to that, or just compressive load under sitting, right? A lot of compression under just sitting in a chair. If I'm adding all that to a spine that's already in sort of flexion, it's likely to push a disc or fluid out somewhere where it shouldn't go. So if you have that flat back, there's a number of things could be happening. Like I said, if we talk about the function of the hamstring and the glutes, which is to pull the pelvis a little more posteriorly, one could say, well, it's probably tight hamstrings and glutes, right? And so we're going to check the quads on the other side. If we got tight hamstrings and glutes, we can anticipate weak and long quads on the other side. Same with the flexors. Okay. Now, if we don't experience that, if we don't have weak quads, if we don't have like an obvious imbalance between our quadricep strength and our hamstring strength, if we don't have an obvious like quad dominance to our gait or our squat or our lunge pattern, then we want to take a look seriously at what's going on in the discs. Okay, because there's only so many things that can cause our hamstrings to tighten up. Now, if we've got excess strength on the hamstring side versus the other side where the quads and the flexors are, that's an obvious explanation. But if there's no like obvious explanation, why is the back flat? Why is the back flat, right? If they're both pretty similar strength wise, and maybe both sides are tight, one side feels taut, right? Or one side's taut, perhaps in the flexors there, they might be a little taut. But if there's no like obvious strength imbalance, going on there, why would the hamstrings be tight and why is the back flat? Well, something that can really cause the back to go flat and the hamstrings to go tight is just loss of function along that lumbar spine. So if there's loss of function along that lumbar spine, as far as like the intrinsic muscle groups, if there's something neurological going on, it's going to shut down the ability to maintain that spinal curve. Right. So if we can imagine this is my normal spinal curve, the length tension relationship between the front and the back of the body is relatively the same. Everything should remain in alignment. But if something happens that causes those to shut off, right, and it's not caused from a length and tension imbalance, it's going on underneath it, then something's going on in the spine. What's going on in the spine? So the most obvious explanations for that is something neurological, right? We have a disc bulge that's impinging into the nerve, and the nerve doesn't like it, and because it's got to protect the spinal cord, right? And so I might just decide to shut down the function of those muscle groups to keep you a little more docile, to keep you from being so active, to prevent you from running and sprinting and lifting heavy weights. And in the course of that happening, the hamstrings and the glutes sense that the more increased demand has been called upon on them, and they're going to create that tension through the fascial network that's connected to the brain, that senses where our pelvis is in space, that senses where our discs are, that senses where our vertebrae are. So that's just a natural response to the body. But another thing that really nobody talks about, I haven't seen every physical therapist in the world, and I haven't seen every spine specialist in the world, but the ones that I've heard about and talked to myself, they're not mentioning what's going on with your digestion. And if we take a look at what's going on with everybody's digestion in the world, basically, especially in the United States, like most people are just messed up digestively. And that's due to the pollution in our air, the pollution in our water, the pollution in the products we put in our skin, the pollution in our food supply. Just everywhere we look, we're facing pollution and toxins, And, as I stated in my podcast a couple weeks back, it's leading to a lot of autoimmunity in our population. So like one could say that is like an autoimmune response where your lower spine is shutting down because of poor digestion. Now, the way that works, like the actual mechanism behind that is we think about our guts being inflamed, right? We're putting whatever's in there, right? Chemicals, you name it, chemicals, non-foods, whatever, what have you. But that inflames everything in there, right? And our viscera get inflamed, our organs get inflamed. They don't like it, right? And so what that does, that also causes inhibition to the muscles surrounding the organ. So you got like your transverse abdominis, you've got your internal obliques, you've got your pelvic floor. On the back side of the body, we got our multifidus, that controls like what happens around the sacral-lumbar junction, the SI joint, all that, all very critical areas to stabilize the pelvis. In order to protect the viscera, the body will shut down function of those inner unit muscle groups if the viscera are inflamed. Again, that's another mechanism for us to want to slow down, to want to calm down, to not put our spine in danger. So that's another thing that can happen. Now, if that's being shut down, those inner unit muscles are shut down, obviously our ability to maintain this shape in the spine is going to diminish. And no amount of stretching, no amount of corrective exercise is going to be able to combat that, going to be able to reverse that, because they're just not turned on. It doesn't matter how strong those muscles are. I keep doing that because this is extending my hand and this is flexing my hand. So it's hard for me to go into like a flexion to simulate an extension, but I'm going to have to adapt. But it doesn't matter how strong those muscles are that create the shape in the spine. If they are shut down, they're going to relax. Okay, so that's something that nobody's really talking about. And that's why it's really important when we're dealing with anybody's body that we have to take a holistic approach to it. We have to take an integrated approach. Uh, there's a term in Chinese medicine, surround the dragon. And generally, wherever the pain manifests, wherever the dysfunction manifests, that's just where the weak link was, where the symptom can burst through and make its effect. But it's a linear, or it's a chain reaction from somewhere else up and down the kinetic chain. So anytime that we go see a Western medical specialist, typically we're seeing a specialist who specializes in the area that we're experiencing symptoms. Shoulder specialist, cervical specialist, a hip specialist, a knee specialist, a spine specialist. Like, all these people are specialists, but they're dealing with the area that the symptom manifested. That's not where the root is, ever, unless it's like acute trauma, right? If I fall off of something and I bust my collarbone, obviously that's the source, right? I might even challenge, like, how's your balance? How's your foot flexor strength? How's your proprioception? Do you have an atlas that's out? Do you got a C1 that's out so your balance is messed up? Even then, that's where I would go with it. But if we just keep rehabbing our injuries through the Western medical approach, the allopathic approach, the specialist approach, we're going to continue to keep chasing our tail. And this is a real particular example. And like I said, the reason why this came up is because of what came up during the week for me, the clients, and and one in particular has been in physical therapy for a long time, a couple of years on and off. And every physical therapist they have just wants them to stretch the shit out of their hamstrings. Stretch your hamstrings, stretch your hamstrings, stretch your hamstrings. It took about 25 minutes to figure out that this person had severe shutdown of their spinal stabilizer muscles, their multifidus, and basically everything from L2 down. And so there was no way that they could stabilize the spine. So of course their hamstrings were tight. Their hamstrings, and you're not going to stretch that out. You're not going to stretch out of that. So that's just, how you can really screw yourself up by always relying on, the typical Western approach to healing our injuries and healing our issues. So anyway, I hope you found value in that. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm going to check comments right now. Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, Mark, what up? Facebook user, my apologies, guys. I can't see who's actually commenting on this, but whoever that is, I know I love you. And not much is up, man. Just or girl, like not much is up. I'm just here doing a live, dropping off my son at the gym and talking about hamstring tightness. So the hamstrings are a great like canary in the coal mine. Really take a look at the hamstrings, what's going on with the hamstrings, and take a look at the pelvis, and there's generally a correlation there. So, and I didn't mention as well, like on that flat back condition with the disc bulge, you're going to want to get a really good assessment. Where do you get a good assessment? Well, if you're in the Montana area, you can find yourself a good local check practitioner, and I'd be happy to give you an assessment to see if you've got a potential disc bulge, and if you do, we can send you somewhere to get it looked at and verified, and from there we can definitely get you something that makes you feel better. But yeah, don't take disc bulges lightly, guys. I mean, a lot of them remain asymptomatic, but the symptom, I mean, we say asymptomatic because they're not creating pain, but they are creating compensation. Those compensations are keeping you from doing things you want to do. And there's no reason to do it. I had a client that's like 75 years old, and he always had extreme tightness in his hamstrings. Like, I mean, we're talking like 50 degree angle when he tries to straighten his leg out. But he was at a point in life where it wasn't really affecting him. He didn't have pain, but it was completely obvious he had multiple disc bulges in his lumbar spine. They weren't causing pain. They would act up here and there, but so obviously he didn't want to go through, the 7-day a week, 25-minute a day corrective exercise program. Can't say I really blame him. He can go about his life just fine. But, if you're in a different position, you might want to rethink it. And if you do want to rethink it and you're not sure where to look, or you're not sure where to go, not sure how to figure out what your actual situation entails or the next step, look me up. That's why I'm here. That's why I've immersed myself in this for the last 7-8 years. It's because I know what's out there isn't designed to help, and isn't designed to heal, and isn't designed to reverse things at the root cause. So that's why I did it. All right, guys. Appreciate everything we got here. Bozzy, Mark, miss you, brother. I miss you. We'll have to hook up again soon, man. It's been too long. It's been way too long. Mark is one of my old snowboarding buddies, and we just had a lot of good times together. When my wife and I were dating, actually, it was our first Valentine's Day together. And Mark, I don't know if you remember this, but when Desiree and I first started dating 21, 22 years ago, this was back when like CD burning and stuff was a thing, and back before all the digital technology. But Mark helped me put together this Valentine's Day CD with all these sappy ass love songs, and gosh, she loved that thing. She loved that CD. Must have worked. She married me. So anyway, guys, I hope you find value in that. And if not, if that's not something you need, I know you know somebody that's got back pain. I know you know somebody that's got hamstring tightness. Send this their way. Share this with them, please. This isn't something, it's super simple. It's super simple concept, but it isn't something that people who are getting therapy or they're not receiving this depth of information. Unfortunately, it's not that deep at all. You just got to open up an anatomy book, a kinesiology book. Yes, sir. Yeah. Casey and JoJo. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you remember. Oh, yeah. I think there was some like Linda Ronstadt on there too. Oh man, there was some sappy ass shit. Skid Row. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff on there. So anyway, guys, I hope you found value in that. And again, share it if you can. All right. I'll be doing another podcast, at least one this week. I apologize for the delay. We've been having a lot of construction in the office, and I've had a busy couple weeks of enrollments. So a lot of people have decided to make a change in their life for good for the rest of their life. And I'm happy and honored that they're trusting me with that guidance. So anyway, been really just neck deep in assessments and writing programs and what have you. So my attention to my content hasn't been there, but I like to give you guys fresh content. I like to give you content that comes from me when I am inspired and when I'm energetic. I'm not the type of guy that's going to write out a month worth of content on a Sunday. That's just not how I roll. Nothing wrong with that, but that's just not how I roll. So I apologize that the content has been fresh, but it'll come back. It always does. All right. Peace, much love, and live well, guys. Thank you.